Simplicity comes in many different shapes, and it's a useful practice for drawing closer to God. Welcome to the Parable Podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Zapchenk, and today I'd love to share with you one of my recent messages from our home church, a series called Your Sacred Path. Please enjoy this message wherever it may find you today. You know, one of my favorite shows is The Office. And as the finale aired, the character Andy Bernard, he said, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." And I believe that when we look back at our lives, the days will be marked by sweet, simple, uncomplicated moments that might not have seemed special at the time, but when you thought about them, those unmemorable and simple moments were actually pretty amazing. We are so quick and detailed that we don't even realize we are actually living. And I believe that we all desire and yearn for a life that is simplistic, to be able to see and to savor and to notice. But how do we get there? As we finish Your Sacred Path series, I hope you are encouraged to find ways to include these practices of rest, talking with God more freely, and confessing things in your life that are holding you back. And hopefully you're discovering new practices or maybe restarting some old ones that are unique to you. Our last practice I would like to offer you today is simplicity. It almost seems too easy and it's often overlooked. But what if we've reduced effort and we reduced mental energy and we amped up intentionality, and it causes us to notice each life-giving moment? What if living simply removes barriers and draws us closer into a relationship with Jesus? However, can we actually live simply when the world screams at us and we feel like we are in this constant swirl of decisions, unnecessary items, non-essential comments, and trivial exploits over and over again? Is living simply actually possible? You may have noticed over the last few weeks, or even the course of your life, when you decide to make a change and possibly start a new practice for the better, there is this barrier of resistance. At the end of May, I have a misaligned fracture that happened to me. It was awesome. And after a week of surgery, week and a half, I went to physical therapy. And I was like, okay, we're going to hit this hard. We're going to get this going so I can walk again. And I was just laying there. It was like literally our first evaluation. And he is just kind of gently massaging this warm gel. It should be very soothing. But I'm like, I still have sutures in my foot. I don't know you, Jesse, okay? How long have you been doing physical therapy? Like, it hurts, and I can feel myself resisting. And he kind of just turns to me and he says, "You know I can feel you resisting what I'm trying to do." And I'm like, oh, I know, okay? But isn't that the truth about our relationship with God? Is our heart's desire is to be in relationship with Him. Yet when we work through and build up any practice, our response is to resist and to pull away. That is the human condition. So prior to this fall, I was training to walk across the Grand Canyon this fall. And so I just assumed, like, I'm going to take off my boot and I should be able to walk 9 miles. That's where I was up to. The bone is only 2.5 to 3.5 inches. Like, this really shouldn't be a problem. But after being immobilized, they give you these like very simple tasks that you have to do. And I thought, I feel like I should be in the advanced version. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to knock these out. Day one, I'm on my front porch. And all you have to do is like scrunch a towel with your toes. You have to move your toes back up and down. I'm picking up marbles. Like, this shouldn't be that hard, but I could see what my other foot could do, the one that was healthy and the other one that was just not there yet. And I just wept because I was so frustrated that I had this resistance. All these simple, teeny tiny little muscles were holding me back. We have made our lives really so intricate. more overly detailed than when we realize, so that when we remove the barriers, we are going to be met with frustration. And a lot of people, we just kind of like, stop. And I know that there's going to be resistance from other people in our life when we're going through growth, or maybe we're changing something about ourselves. And that can be hard, but what I've found is the most difficult, the hardest person, the one that fights against resistance, is ourselves. And even at times unknowingly, because we've been accustomed to how we do things a certain way, or we do things the right way. If we want to practice living more simply, it starts with ourselves. So before we step into any practice that we want to embark on, we have to remind ourselves there is going to be resistance. And that's okay. It's totally normal. And as we hit that barrier, it provides us a chance to stop, to listen, and to hear what's actually going on the inside. So I want you to ask yourself, what am I wanting to resist in this moment? Is this pulling away from my busy schedule? Does it feel uncomfortable? Maybe we feel like, I don't understand how to do this at all. Am I being lazy? Naming it is important because it can change from day to day and season to season of our life. Simplicity comes in many shapes, and it's not just about cleaning out your junk drawer or eating a certain kind of food. Naming that resistance helps us to recognize the areas in our life that we built up these barriers, and so we can break through them. Through practices we can use so that we can draw closer to Jesus. So I created a fun acronym for you all. I don't expect you to memorize this, but it helps us in a little bit of retraining. My hope is that one of these tactics will resonate with you so you can feel like you have a good grasp and just scratch the surface on living simply, so we can draw us closer to Jesus. And it allows us to have more room for God in our lives. So the first one is S, as you can figure out how simple is spelled. It is start small and specific. And you may have heard the phrase, keep it simple, stupid. It was associated with Kelly Johnson. He was one of the most talented and prolific aircraft engineers in the history of aviation. In the 1930s, Johnson and his team developed the advanced twin-engine fighter, the P-38 Lightning. And that went on to produce 10,000 P-38s for World War II, and it was heavily involved in that time. And he didn't stop there. Johnson and his team at Lockheed, they went on to create the SR-71 Blackbird, which is a long-range Mach 3 Renaissance aircraft. And fun fact, if you watch the new Top Gun movie, this is what they modeled Tom Cruise's aircraft after. Now, I really don't like calling people stupid. I don't even like calling myself stupid. I remember when our kids were little, I'm like, don't you say stupid, okay? So every time I hear stupid, it's just like there's that tension that comes up. But the statement is not meant to be demeaning, but just to keep things simple. Johnson constantly challenged his design engineers to create an aircraft that could be repaired by an average mechanic in the field with basic tools, especially under combat conditions. When we make practices more intricate and more difficult, it can become frustrating. There's aisles and aisles of books and Bible studies at Barnes & Nobles and online, every single place. But not every book or plan or practice is going to look the same for every person. I met my friend Claire in college. She was a missionary kid, and we lived together the first year after college when we all had our first jobs. And Claire was a barista at Starbucks, and I was so jealous of Claire's Bible study. Every morning she would get up, and she usually had to open, so she got at Starbucks at 4:30 to 5:30 in the morning, but she would wake up an extra hour earlier, and she would read her Bible for an entire hour. She had note cards, she had highlighters, which I thought probably was the coolest part. And I was like, okay, like that is what I'm going to do. Even if I had to be to work at 11 a.m., I still could not wake up on time. And it was so challenging because I'm like, why can't I get this? And I found myself frustrated because I didn't keep it small. That practice was for Claire. It wasn't for me. And I should have told myself, just keep it simple, stupid. Because when we're in the battle of the everyday, just like Johnson's aircraft, we just need to have time for these basic, simple practices that are unique to us so that we can repair our hearts and draw us back to God. The next one is I for intentionality. Simplicity provides us a sense of focus. Have you ever watched a little kid, or maybe it was yourself, at the ticket counter at Chuck E. Cheese? All right, they have all these tickets. Their value, I feel like, is less than a penny. And they have like just so much. And they're just like, oh, these last 5 tickets, what is it going to be? A Tootsie Roll. One Tootsie Roll. Is it a whistle that their mom is going to throw out the second they get home? Or is it that slappy hand thing that slaps their sister in the face? Like, it's a tough decision. I appreciate the saint of a person that is running that ticket counter. But it is about focus, as silly as that is. When we simplify our choice and each day be intentional, it allows us to focus on what we can do to ease up, take a breath, and remember the ultimate focus, Jesus. The Apostle Paul, he wrote this: "Friends, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert in all of this, but I've got my eye on the goal, where God is beckoning us onward to Jesus. I'm off and I'm running and I'm not turning back." We get wrapped up in so many things each day and we forget what really matters. But when this world fades away, there's only going to be Jesus. So can we find some strength in Paul's encouragement, possibly remind ourselves when we wake up each day, even before our feet hit the floor, before we grab our phone, to remind ourselves, what's the goal? How can we set our intention on Jesus for the day? Or when we feel that surge of overwhelm in the afternoon, or maybe it's late at night, there's that anxiety of just missing out. Simply think and refocus our intention, running towards Jesus. And you know what? He is cheering us on every step of the way. We're running, or maybe sometimes we're limping. And it's that simple act to keep us from chipping away at those barriers that we have created, and it draws us closer into our unmistakably clear relationship with Jesus. The next one is M for mental energy. Do you know that you have worms in your brain? Okay, before you freak out and ask for a doctor, let me tell you this. In 2020, the Human Connect to Me project suggested that people typically have more than 6,000 thoughts a day. If you see the amount of tabs that I have open on my computer and my phone, you would highly agree at that. So how did they do this? Well, they used brain imaging to track when new thoughts began. The participants were either resting or they were watching a movie. And those transitions, they trigger brain worms, just like our spontaneous thoughts, that they can see where one thought ends and another one begins. That's a lot of bandwidth for 6,000 different directions every single day. And it's actually quite amazing on what goes on up there. So now I'd like for you to think about just your last 24 hours. Which categories would some of these 6,000 thoughts fall into? Is it regret? Scenarios of what could possibly happen? Wondering, does anyone love me? Let me Google that. Worries about your family, your neighbor's dog, shame, hope for what is to come, your to-do list, past memories. Am I invisible? Do I need ketchup? Is just crying out in prayer. You get to fill in the blank. It's your thought worms. Do you see one overflowing more than another? The Apostle Peter wrote this: "Since God cares for you, Let him carry all of your burdens and worries, and most importantly, be disciplined and stay on guard. Your enemy, the devil, is prowling around outside like a roaring lion, just waiting and hoping for the chance to devour someone. Our enemy, he is highly strategic at removing simplicity and bombarding us with thoughts that after a while we're like, that's just normal. Then guess what? Negativity sets in, so does fear. We become callous, and then all of a sudden, we're scared, and we turn away from God. That's what he wants. Remember, Peter knows this all too well. He loved Jesus, but when Jesus was going to the cross, he's like, Jesus? Jesus who? And Peter denied him 3 times, and I'm sure afterwards he was like, how did that even happen? So what is taking up residence in your mental space? Simply staying on guard in our mind is a practice in itself. Peter reminds us that when it's overwhelming, or maybe even not, that God cares for you. And all of those 6,000 thoughts, he wants to carry them for us. The next is P, for possessions and space. There's a story in Matthew and Mark where there's a young, wealthy man, and he has followed all of God's commandments. And he comes up to Jesus, and he's just like, yeah, I've done all the things. God, what is the next thing that I need to do? Remember, Jesus is all-knowing. So he knows at the heart of this young man that he's not at the core of it for him. So he says, I want you to sell all of your possessions, and I want you to give all of your money to the poor. And then you can come and follow me. Shocked, the young man walked away, feeling sick. And he realized, did he love his possessions much more than he did Jesus? He may be thinking, oh my gosh, Danielle, are you telling me to go home right now and sell everything and give it to the poor? No. But there's a lesson here. When we live simply, are there possessions? Are there bank accounts? Are there homes? Are there relationships that are taking up much more precedence in our life over Jesus? We think, okay, yeah, I could live without that. That's no big deal. But faced with that question, we can squirm a little bit in our seats. Are there some physical things in our lives that are owning you, or is there space to simplify? The next one is L, for less consumption and more contentment. Have you ever bought anything because you're like, I need this? Have you ever done something over and over because you're trying to fit into this perfect image, and then if you just do that, life is going to be good, right? Have you ever ate something just because you wanted to feel better? I've seen many bottoms of ice cream cartons, okay? Did you hear all the I's and the my's? Consumption is real for all of us, and the world, it knows it. Just the last Amazon Prime Day alone, it generated a total of $24.1 billion. Trust me, they were banking on your consumption over contentment. Living simply is choosing less consumption and more contentment. And Paul, he wrote this to his friend Timothy as he was trying to confront some really difficult things that were going on in a church. He said, if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. The word content in Greek translates to the word substance. And God wants to give us our lives that is one of substance. But we regularly consume a fast food diet of faith because it's fast, it's quick, tastes good in the moment, but it doesn't actually fill us up. And then we find other things and items and people that we hope that are going to fill this void that we have in our life. Paul knew that beyond the basic food and clothing, we would want more and more and more. He continued to write Timothy, and he was really sad because he knows that chasing consumption is only going to lead us into sorrow. But contentment, for those that want to have a life that simply follows after Jesus, it's trusting him that's better, regardless of your circumstances, and that's really challenging. And finally, it's experiencing Jesus. I think the saddest thing that so many people with their faith, they follow all these rules, all these different plans and devotionals, but you know what? They never get to experience Jesus. It is so cool that we get to do these practices that allow us to live simply, and we get to experience the creator of the universe, God, Jesus, in our lives. It doesn't need a special template. We just have to start by asking, what am I resisting in this moment? We can easily make it harder and way more complicated than it needs to be. So here are some ideas. And again, find something that is unique to you. This is not the end-all, be-all. But first, start small and specific. That is to yourself. Like, what are the things that you enjoy, that bring you life? Whether that's painting or doodling, or maybe you just really love putting Lego sets together. Like, God can be in that with you. Invite God into whatever space that you're in, into the season. He gets to enjoy that with you as well. I for intentionality. When we are walking or driving, I want you to pick one of your favorite colors and then notice that on the outside. What that is doing is honing in like that specificity. I can do it, specificity. So that's what happens. It's like we just like go all of our 6,000 thoughts, and we want to run that race with intentionality. So as we do simple things like that, it helps us to be more intentional. M for mental energy. It is just simplifying bandwidth. One thing for me is I've turned off all notifications on my phone. You can do that for everything. I don't know if you know that. It's possible. Have a 12-year-old. They'll fix it for you. Okay. I don't know when you bought your phone. Like, I don't remember agreeing to be available 24/7. But that's one thing that you can do. Also, I have a problem. Like, I'll be watching something on TV. I'm like, I know that guy from somewhere. And then I'll Google it and be like, oh, what's that recipe? Like, my brain just goes in so many different areas. So, like, just trying to just be more focused on my mental energy. P for possessions and space. I was at physical therapy, as I do most days, and the lady across from me, I don't know why she was saying this, but she's just like, you know what? I still have my Thigh Master from Suzanne Summers. And I'm like, okay, young kids, look her up. But anyways, the Thigh Master, she's like, I just can't get rid of it. And I'm like, what? Okay, so just really think about your possessions and your space. It's removing some of those physical things that are holding our attention over God. L, less consumption and more contentment. It's reducing that actual need over a want. I tell that to myself and our kids. I'm like, do you really need this, or do you just want it? Contentment is going to give you sustenance and following after God. And finally, E, for experiencing Jesus. Experiencing Jesus doesn't have to be hard. It is sitting with Jesus and laughing with friends just around the table. It is breathing. The warmth of your coffee cup in your hand. It seems so simple, right? Maybe you just feel your heartbeat, find your pulse. He created that. We don't even just use like the breath in each and every day. We don't even use our whole lung capacity because we're just going. So just taking that moment to rest and find your heartbeat. I know it feels almost too easy. None of these practices, though, are quick fixes, and it feels like it's just like a small common seed. But over time, some watering, care, and light, it can grow into something really beautiful. So don't worry, like, how am I going to do all of this? Am I doing simplicity wrong? In Matthew 6, it says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. If you just continue just to do that one thing, to seek and embrace God in the simplicity, he's going to be right there with you every step of the way. God has a heart that beats for you. John 3:16 reminds us of that. Little kids sing about it. And we need to be reminded that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not die, but have everlasting life. His actions, while they were so huge, they were really pretty simple. They were sincere and unconditional, and we may feel like we don't have much to really offer in this life. But all God is asking in return is that you have a heart that beats for him, not one of this world, so we can live simply by removing the barriers and draw closer to Jesus, closer than ever, into our relationship with him. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this message. And if you're interested in seeing the live video, I will link it in the show notes. And here are 2 reflection questions from our time together today. Number 1, where are you meeting the reality of resistance lately? And number 2, which of the tactics can you take time to work through this week? Just as a reminder, I'd love for you to go ahead and take my listener survey. There is a link in today's show notes. And then by doing so, I'm going to give you 10 basic tips to enhance your conversations and really listen well. Next week, we're back to our regularly scheduled parable episodes with my friend Sylvia Thompson with an amazing parable story. To connect with me, simply visit DanielleZapchenk.com for details. That's going to do it for today. I appreciate you spending time with me. Remember, living simply removes barriers and draws us closer into our relationship with Jesus. We'll see you next time on the Parable Podcast.